Good morning and welcome to Bible Truth for Kids. Today is the last part of our story of Esther, and today's story is called A New Edict, a Deliverance, and a New Festival. In the book of Esther, there's only four main characters. There's King Xerxes, the ruler of the Persian Empire, Esther, a Jewish girl who became queen, Mordecai, who was Esther's cousin and brought her up after her parents died, and the wicked Haman, who put into action a plot to destroy the Jews entirely, to wipe them out on the 13th day of Adar. Now that day is fast approaching, but the plot was revealed and Haman was hanged. And after Haman was hanged, King Xerxes gave Esther control of all of Haman's estate. So all of his property, everything he owned, came under Esther's control. And she appointed Mordecai as her manager to manage all of that for her. And then she also came before King Xerxes and revealed that Mordecai was a close relative and also her protector. Now, King Xerxes was well pleased with Mordecai, and in fact, he gave Mordecai his signet ring. He trusted Mordecai, and he made him the new prime minister in place of Haman. So by having this signet ring, you can issue edicts on behalf of the king. You're very powerful. Now then, Esther came before King Xerxes again, and this time she was pleading, she was weeping, and she was begging that King Xerxes reverse that order of having the Jews utterly destroyed. But no matter how much she begged and pleaded, King Xerxes said, Esther, you're asking for the impossible. An edict that has gone out under the king's name and with his seal cannot be reversed. But then he called Esther and Mordecai, two of him, and he said, together, you could write a new edict. You could say whatever you want to say. You've got my signet ring. If you think of something that would help this situation, go ahead and write it. Well, Mordecai didn't waste any time at all. He knew what he was going to do, and he immediately drew up a new edict, the king's message. It was going to go out to all 127 provinces in every language throughout the empire that people spoke, and specifically the language Hebrew, because that's what the Jews spoke. And he used hot wax and the signet ring to seal it. There's not much time left before the 13th day of Adar, so he went and he took the king's steeds, their horses, very swift, to deliver these edicts because he needed express delivery. Now, what did this new edict say? Well, I want you to think for a moment, if you were a Jew and you knew there had been an order out there to have you, killed on a particular day, what would you do? Would you run away? Would you hide somewhere? Would you barricade yourself in the house? What would you do? Well, what were the Jews planning to do? I don't know. But you know what? This new edict said that the Jews could defend themselves. They could gather all of their military resources together, whatever they needed. On that 13th day of Adar, they didn't have to run and hide. They were going to be allowed to defend themselves. Now, this edict went out throughout the whole empire, and some distances were like 2,000 miles. Here's Susa, the capital. Sorry, this is Susa over here. And, when that edict went out, some of those people were a little bit afraid of the Jews now because, Mordecai is a Jew, and now he's the prime minister, and he's powerful, and he's in control, and the Jews are going to be allowed to defend themselves. Like, maybe it would be an advantage to be a Jew. Some of them actually pretended that they were Jews because they had suddenly become a little afraid. Now, the 13th day of Adar that was only one day when the Jews would be allowed to defend themselves and the enemies would be allowed to try to destroy them. Only one day. It wasn't going to be an ongoing battle or a war or anything like that, just one day. So when the 13th day of Adar came, the battles in many places throughout the empire were fierce, very fierce. Now, if you were an enemy, but you didn't attack a Jew, well, you were safe. It was only people that tried to oppose them, that hated them, that the Jews fought against. You know, in the city of Susa on that one day, 500 men were killed. And the total throughout all of the empire, the other provinces, came to 75,000. But you know, the Jews didn't take any plunder. And what that means is, when they killed their enemies, they didn't take anything. They didn't take their clothes. They didn't take any jewelry. They didn't take any of their animals, any of their property, nothing at all. They didn't kill any women or children. They were only defending themselves. Now, when that day came to an end, King Xerxes said to Esther, "Do you have any other request? Is there anything else that you want me to do?" And Esther said, "Yes, there is. The 10 sons of Haman should be hanged so that they don't take revenge against the king because of their father who was killed." And so that day, all at once, the 10 sons of Haman were hanged. But something very lovely happened as well. When you've been delivered from your enemies like the Jews were, it's a time for celebration. And so they wanted a new festival. They wanted a new holiday or something. And so Mordecai and Queen Esther put into effect a new festival to be held on the 14th day of Adar. And it was to be called Purim. Now, where do you think they got that name Purim from for this new holiday? Well, do you remember when Haman was trying to determine what day to kill the Jews, he cast Pur. And so that's where they got the name for the new festival. They called it Purim. Now, Mordecai put into effect that on this holiday, when you had a feast, you also exchanged gifts with each other, and you also had to give gifts to the poor. And so every year, just like every year there is Easter and there's Christmas and there's all kinds of holidays, every year on the 14th day of Adar, a new festival, Purim, to celebrate their deliverance from their enemies. Now, the story of Esther, it took place about 2,500 years ago. But the Jews today, they still celebrate Purim on the 14th day of Adar. They have a feast, like a party. They give gifts to each other. They give gifts to the poor. But they also started off by reading the book of Esther. They read the whole story from start to finish. That's the first thing they do. And every child is given a rattle. And so when it comes to the part of the story where Haman's name is mentioned, they shake their rattles to drown out the sound of Haman's name. I like that part. Now, Purim then is the celebration of the deliverance of the Jews against their enemies brought about by God through Esther. When Mordecai had first said to Esther, "You need to go before the king and plead for the Jews," he had told her, "If you don't, then deliverance will come from somewhere else." But Esther had courage, and she went, and she was responsible. God worked through her to deliver the Jews from their enemies. Many nations since that time, even before that time, they have come against Israel, God's chosen people, the nation Israel, and tried to destroy them and wipe them out, but they never have. They have never been able to because they are God's chosen people. Many nations over the last few hundred years, they have been destroyed and wiped out and disappeared off the face of the earth, but not Israel, because they are God's people. And God is sovereign. He is their protector. He still has a plan and a purpose for Israel. You know, even today, the Palestinians, they're fighting against Israel, but God is their protector. God is trustworthy. And because he's trustworthy, it means we can trust him for anything and for everything. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to trust God. I want you to give him your best and love him with your whole heart. So we'll see you next time.